Ryan had always loved his home. It was a small, cozy house at the edge of a quiet neighborhood. He had spent years fixing it, painting the walls, and planting flowers in the garden. To him, it was more than just a house, it was a place full of memories. Every corner reminded him of good times with friends and family. One morning, Ryan received a message from his office. He had been offered a short project in another city, something that would take him away for a few weeks. At first, he hesitated. Leaving his home felt strange, but the project was too important to pass up. He packed a few bags, made sure everything was secure, and left. Before leaving, he checked on his house, locked all doors, and switched on his security cameras. He also had a drone he used for filming his backyard and neighborhood. Ryan liked flying it just for fun, and it could stream live video directly to his phone. He didn't think much about it as he turned it on for a quick check before leaving. The first few days in the city went well. Ryan focused on his work, calling home only to make sure everything was okay. The neighborhood looked calm on his camera app. He thought about his plants and his little garden but assumed they were fine. Then, on the fourth day, something unusual appeared on his drone's live stream. At first, it looked like construction trucks entering the neighborhood. Ryan squinted at the screen. "What is that?" he whispered to himself. A yellow bulldozer had stopped right in front of his house. Ryan's heart started beating fast. He zoomed in on the camera, and to his shock, he could see workers stepping out with a clipboard. They were walking toward his front door. Ryan quickly checked his phone to make sure the feed was still live. It was. His hands were shaking. He tried to call the neighborhood association, the HOA, but the line went straight to voicemail. Panic began to rise in him. Ryan remembered the rules in the neighborhood, strict ones that often seemed unnecessary. But he had always paid his fees and followed all the rules. Nothing he did should have caused this. The workers started placing warning signs on his lawn. Ryan could see clearly from the drone that they were taking pictures, measuring the property, and marking spots on the ground. It was clear they were planning to bulldoze the house. Ryan's stomach dropped. "No, this cannot be happening," he muttered. Ryan tried calling the police immediately. He explained what he saw through the live feed from his drone. The dispatcher listened carefully and assured him that officers would be sent. As he watched the live stream, he realized something strange. The workers had begun the demolition even before the police arrived. The bulldozer started moving slowly at first, pushing against the front porch. Ryan could see the bricks fall in real time. His mind raced. He had no way to stop them physically. He was miles away and helpless. But the drone was still recording everything. Ryan realized the police now had a clear view of the action, thanks to the live stream. He hoped this would make a difference. Neighbors began coming out of their houses, some waving at the workers, some shouting questions. Ryan could hear them through the drone's microphone. One elderly woman looked shocked and tried to argue with the workers. Another man was filming everything on his phone. It seemed the entire neighborhood was witnessing what should not have been happening. Ryan could not believe his eyes. His house, the place he had loved and cared for, was disappearing in front of him. Yet, there was a small part of him that felt relief. The live stream meant someone would know the truth. The police would see the workers and the bulldozer, and maybe they could stop the destruction or take action later. While watching the stream, Ryan noticed a worker glance up toward the sky. Ryan realized the drone had been spotted. The worker seemed confused for a moment, then returned to his task. Ryan held his breath, hoping the drone would not be damaged. Minutes felt like hours as the bulldozer continued. Ryan could see the porch collapse completely. Windows shattered under the heavy metal blade. Dust rose into the air, covering the lawn and garden. It was like watching a nightmare unfold. Finally, the sound of sirens reached Ryan through the drone's microphone. The police had arrived. The workers froze and stepped back from the bulldozer. Ryan felt a mix of fear and hope. He knew the real battle had just begun. Even though the house was being destroyed, Ryan was not defeated. He had proof, and now he had the authorities watching. This was only the beginning of the story, and he was determined to fight back. The police arrived quickly, their lights flashing across the quiet neighborhood. Ryan watched from his drone's live feed as two officers stepped out of their car. They approached the bulldozer cautiously, speaking to the workers who were frozen in place. Ryan's heart pounded. He had never felt so far from home yet so involved at the same time. The lead officer, a tall man with a calm voice, asked the workers why they were demolishing the house. One of the men handed over some papers. The officer took a moment to read them, frowning as he compared the information on the documents with the live video from Ryan's drone. The workers began arguing quietly among themselves. Ryan could see the confusion clearly. It seemed even they were unsure why the house was being destroyed. Ryan's phone buzzed with a call from the police dispatcher. "Sir, can you keep your drone in the air? We need a live feed to see everything that is happening," the dispatcher said. Ryan nodded, even though they could not see him. He adjusted the drone's position to capture a wider view of the yard. Neighbors gathered around, some shaking their heads, others whispering angrily. One man shouted, "This is crazy. He pays his fees on time." A woman added, "I have never seen anything like this in this neighborhood." Their voices were captured clearly by the drone's microphone. Ryan felt a small comfort knowing that witnesses were present. The lead officer spoke again, this time more firmly. "Everyone stop. We need to investigate before any further damage is done. No one can continue work on this property until we know what is happening." The bulldozer operator reluctantly stepped back. Ryan exhaled slowly. For now, the house was safe. The porch had been damaged, but the main structure was still standing. Ryan began to explain the situation to the officer. He told them about the HOA, his payments, and how he had followed every rule. He also mentioned that the drone had been recording everything live, and that the police could see the entire sequence of events. The officer listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. Ryan felt relief that his voice was finally being heard. As the investigation continued, Ryan noticed the HOA president approaching the scene. She was a middle-aged woman with a stern expression and a clipboard in hand. She argued loudly with the officers, claiming that the demolition was legal and that Ryan had violated several rules. The officers remained calm, reminding her that no demolition could continue while an investigation was ongoing. Ryan watched through the drone as the HOA president looked frustrated. She gestured to the workers, who were now standing quietly by the bulldozer. Ryan could see her lips moving, but the drone's microphone only picked up fragments of her speech. Still, the tension in her movements was clear. After some time, the officers allowed Ryan to speak directly with the HOA president. He explained calmly that he had followed all rules, paid fees on time, and never received any warnings. The president argued back, insisting there were complaints from neighbors about his garden and decorations. Ryan was stunned. He had never thought small complaints could lead to something as serious as demolition. Meanwhile, the police began documenting the scene. They took photographs, examined the property, and compared everything to the drone feed. Ryan watched every moment, feeling more confident that the evidence would support him. The drone had captured the truth. Everything the HOA claimed was being done without reason, and now the police had proof. The officers then decided to secure the property. They placed official notices on the lawn and doors, stating that no work could continue and that any further demolition would be considered illegal. Ryan felt a wave of relief. For the first time since seeing the bulldozer, he felt hope. His home was still standing, and the authorities were taking the situation seriously. Neighbors started to talk to the police, giving statements about what they had seen. Some mentioned that Ryan had always been a responsible homeowner. Others said that the HOA had often acted unfairly. Ryan listened through the drone's feed, grateful for their support. The community was starting to stand with him. As night fell, the area grew quiet again. The bulldozer was parked away from the house, and the workers had left under police supervision. Ryan kept the drone hovering for a while longer, making sure everything remained safe. He felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. This incident had shaken him, but it had also given him strength. He knew he would not let his home be taken without a fight. Ryan leaned back in his chair in the temporary apartment where he was staying, still watching the live feed. The house was damaged but intact. The police were involved, neighbors were supportive, and the drone had captured everything. He realized that technology, which he often used just for fun, had now become his greatest ally. He knew the next steps would not be easy. He would have to fight the HOA, repair his house, and restore his peace of mind. But for the first time since leaving, Ryan felt that he was not alone. The evidence was on his side, and the neighborhood had seen the truth. His story was just beginning, and he was ready to face it. The next morning, Ryan woke up early, unable to stop thinking about his house. He still could not believe that his home had almost been destroyed while he was away. He checked the drone feed again, even though the police had left for the night. The house looked quiet but damaged. The front porch had partially collapsed, the garden was covered in dirt, and the windows had cracks. Ryan felt a pang of sadness but also a spark of determination. He would fix everything. Ryan decided to call a local lawyer he had met once at a neighborhood meeting. Her name was Clara, and she was known for helping homeowners with tricky situations. Ryan explained everything to her: the HOA, the bulldozer, the workers, and how the drone had captured the live feed. Clara listened carefully and then said, "Ryan, you have strong evidence. The police and your drone feed will help prove that the HOA acted without proper notice. We can stop them from doing any more damage, and you can even seek compensation for what happened." Ryan felt a little relieved. He had been worried that fighting the HOA would be impossible. Clara told him to gather all the paperwork he had, including HOA fee receipts, emails, and any past warnings or notices. Ryan realized that he had kept everything organized for years. He felt proud that this habit would now help him. Later that day, Ryan received a message from a neighbor, Mrs. Lopez, who had watched the live stream from her house. She said, "Ryan, I cannot believe what happened. I recorded the stream too. If you need more witnesses, I am ready to help." Ryan smiled. He realized that many neighbors had seen the events unfold, and their support could be crucial. Ryan decided to visit his house. Even though he was still technically away for work, he needed to see the damage in person. When he arrived, he saw the police tape around the property. Officers were checking the perimeter to ensure no one entered illegally. Ryan thanked them and explained that he wanted to inspect the damage. They allowed him inside carefully, pointing out areas that needed attention. The sight of his house made Ryan both sad and determined. The porch needed to be rebuilt, the windows replaced, and the garden restored. But Ryan did not feel helpless anymore. With Clara's help and the evidence from the drone, he knew he could fight back. He also noticed small things that reminded him of happier times: a bird bath he had installed, a tree swing, and flower pots he had painted himself. Ryan decided he would not let this place go. Over the next few days, Ryan and Clara worked on preparing the case. They wrote letters to the HOA, stating that their actions were illegal and demanding a stop to any further demolition. They also informed the police and city officials, providing the drone footage as proof. Ryan felt confident that justice was on his side. Meanwhile, the neighborhood began to take notice. Other homeowners shared their concerns about the HOA, talking about rules that seemed unfair or unnecessary. Some mentioned small fines or warnings they had received for minor issues. Ryan realized that his case might help others in the community. The HOA had acted in a way that affected not just him but the trust of the entire neighborhood. Ryan also decided to repair some minor damages immediately. He hired a local contractor to fix the porch temporarily, so the house looked safe and secure. He took pictures of the repairs and shared them with Clara for the case. He also checked the garden, removing debris and planting new flowers. It gave him a sense of control and hope. At night, Ryan often checked the drone feed, making sure no one returned to the property without permission. The drone had become more than a toy, it was now a guardian of his home. Watching from above, he could see the quiet neighborhood, the streets, and his house standing firm despite the damage. He felt proud that he had found a way to protect his home even from miles away. One evening, as Ryan reviewed the drone footage with Clara, they noticed something unusual. The HOA president had visited the property late in the afternoon. She walked slowly around the house, taking notes and looking at the damage. Clara said, "She is likely trying to plan a response. But this footage is important. It shows she was aware of the damage and the police involvement." Ryan nodded. Every piece of evidence mattered. He felt ready for the next step, confronting the HOA officially and making sure they could not destroy his home again. The battle was just beginning, but Ryan knew he was not alone. With neighbors, police, Clara, and the drone, he had a team on his side. As he went to sleep that night, Ryan looked at the small light blinking on his drone controller. It reminded him that no matter how far he was, he could always keep an eye on what mattered most. His house had been almost lost, but now, he was determined to save it completely. Ryan spent the next morning planning carefully. He knew that dealing with the HOA would not be easy. They had already shown they could take extreme actions without warning. But now, Ryan had something powerful on his side: the live drone footage, the support of neighbors, and the law. He felt more confident than ever. Clara suggested that Ryan request a formal meeting with the HOA board. The goal was simple: to confront them with the evidence and demand answers. Ryan agreed, though he felt a bit nervous. He had never been in a meeting like this before, and the thought of facing the HOA president and board members made his stomach tense. When Ryan arrived at the HOA office, the board members were already seated, their expressions serious. The president, Mrs. Reed, sat at the center, her clipboard in hand. She looked at Ryan as if he had come to argue, but Ryan stayed calm. Clara was by his side, ready to speak when needed. Ryan began. "I am here because the HOA demolished my house while I was away. I followed every rule, paid my fees on time, and never received any warnings. I have proof of what happened." He held up his phone and began showing the drone footage. Every moment of the demolition, captured live, played clearly on the screen. The board members were quiet. They watched the footage, their eyes widening as the destruction unfolded on the screen. Ryan noticed the president shifting uncomfortably in her chair. Clara spoke next. "This footage proves that the demolition happened without proper notice or legal procedure. Your actions were not only unfair but also illegal. We expect a full explanation and immediate steps to prevent further damage." Mrs. Reed opened her mouth, but no words came out immediately. She glanced at other board members, who were whispering quietly. Finally, she said, "There were complaints about your property and decorations. We acted according to regulations." Ryan shook his head. "Complaints are not a reason to destroy a home. Even if there were complaints, there are legal procedures. You did not follow any of them. The police were called, and they confirmed the demolition was not allowed." Clara added, "We are willing to resolve this matter without going to court, but only if the HOA acknowledges the mistake and stops any further actions against Ryan's property. Compensation for damages must also be considered." The board members continued to whisper among themselves. Ryan stayed calm, focusing on the facts. The footage on his phone showed every step: the bulldozer moving forward, the workers marking the property, and even Mrs. Reed visiting the house later. It was clear that the HOA had acted without proper authority. After a few tense moments, one of the board members finally spoke. "We will review this evidence carefully. But the complaints cannot be ignored." Ryan responded firmly. "We are not ignoring complaints. We are asking for fair treatment. My home cannot be destroyed because of minor complaints. There are legal ways to address issues, and those were not followed." The meeting lasted for nearly an hour. Ryan and Clara presented all the evidence, including emails, receipts, and witness statements from neighbors. The board members had to acknowledge that they had acted improperly. The atmosphere changed from defensive to cautious. Ryan could see that they were realizing the seriousness of the situation. Finally, Mrs. Reed spoke again. "We will stop any further demolition and will discuss compensation for the damages. We will also review our procedures to ensure this does not happen again." Ryan felt a wave of relief. It was not a complete victory, but it was a start. The HOA had acknowledged their mistake, and his house was safe for now. Clara reminded him that the next step would be to follow up on the compensation and ensure that the house was fully repaired. As Ryan left the office, he felt a sense of pride. He had stayed calm, presented evidence clearly, and had the support of his lawyer and neighbors. The drone, which had seemed like a simple hobby, had played a critical role in protecting his home. That evening, Ryan returned to his house. The front porch had been taped off by the police, and workers were no longer near the property. Neighbors waved as he arrived, some bringing food or small gifts to show support. Mrs. Lopez, who had recorded the drone footage, smiled warmly and said, "We are all on your side, Ryan. You did the right thing." Ryan felt grateful. He realized that sometimes people needed help to stand up for themselves. The support of others made a huge difference. He also realized the importance of documenting everything and using technology wisely. He walked through the house slowly, inspecting the damage. There was still work to do, but it no longer felt overwhelming. With neighbors and professionals helping, Ryan knew the house could be restored. The experience had taught him patience, resilience, and the power of community. That night, Ryan watched the drone feed one last time before turning it off. The house stood quietly under the streetlights, protected and ready for repair. Ryan smiled. He knew the battle was not over completely, but he had won the first round. The future felt brighter, and he was determined to see his home restored completely. The following morning, Ryan returned to his house, determined to start repairs. He contacted a local contractor, Mr. Harris, who was known for careful work and fast results. Mr. Harris inspected the damage and made a detailed plan for fixing the porch, windows, and garden. Ryan watched every step, making sure the work was done correctly. As the repairs began, neighbors continued to show support. Mrs. Lopez brought coffee for the workers, and Mr. Patel offered tools and equipment. Children waved from their yards, curious about the construction. Ryan felt a sense of community he had never experienced before. Even though the demolition had been frightening, it had brought people together. Meanwhile, Clara kept working on the legal side. She sent letters to the HOA demanding compensation for damages and proof that proper procedures would be followed in the future. The HOA responded slowly at first, but eventually, they agreed to discuss terms. Ryan was relieved. His home was being repaired, and the HOA could no longer act without accountability. One afternoon, Ryan noticed a small group of neighbors gathered near his house. They were talking quietly, pointing toward the construction. Mrs. Lopez came over and explained that some people were worried the HOA might try something again. Ryan reassured them. "With the police and our evidence, nothing will happen. We are prepared, and the house is safe." The contractor worked efficiently. The porch was rebuilt, sturdy, and well painted. Cracked windows were replaced with new ones, shining in the sunlight. The garden was cleaned, and new flowers were planted along the walkway. Ryan felt joy seeing his home return to its original state. The house looked even better than before. While repairs continued, Ryan took time to talk with neighbors who had witnessed the bulldozing. Some had recorded videos on their phones, and others had taken notes. They shared their experiences and how the event had affected them. Ryan realized that the neighborhood was stronger because people were paying attention and supporting each other. At night, Ryan often reviewed the drone footage with Clara. They discussed the progress of the case against the HOA and planned the next steps. The evidence was clear, and Clara believed they had a strong position to request full compensation. Ryan felt confident. The drone, which had started as a fun gadget, had become a key tool in protecting his home and his rights. One evening, while Ryan was checking the garden, a delivery arrived. It was a large package from a local company offering help after hearing about the incident. Inside were supplies for repairing the interior, paint, and materials for small decorations. Ryan smiled, touched by the gesture. The support of the community and local businesses made him feel less alone. A few days later, Clara called with good news. The HOA has agreed to a settlement. They will cover the repair costs, and they have promised to follow proper procedures for any future complaints. Your home is protected legally. Ryan could hardly believe it. After all the fear and stress, the situation was finally being resolved. Ryan invited some neighbors to help celebrate the small victory. They gathered in the front yard, enjoying snacks and talking about the events. Children ran around the garden, and adults shared stories. Ryan realized that even though the bulldozer had caused destruction, it had also shown him the importance of community, courage, and staying calm in difficult situations. While sitting in his restored living room that evening, Ryan reflected on everything. He had learned the value of preparation, the importance of documenting evidence, and the power of technology when used wisely. Most importantly, he had learned that support from others could make even the most challenging situations manageable. Ryan looked at the drone controller, still on the table. The small light blinked softly, reminding him of the days when it had streamed the demolition live to the police. He felt grateful. The house was safe, the repairs were complete, and justice was beginning to be served. As he turned off the lights and prepared for bed, Ryan felt a sense of peace. The nightmare of the bulldozing was behind him. His home, the place he loved and cared for, was finally secure. Ryan knew there might still be small challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them. With careful planning, strong evidence, and the support of neighbors and friends, he had reclaimed his home and his confidence. Days passed, and Ryan continued to oversee the repairs and improvements to his home. The porch and windows were finished, and the garden was flourishing once again. Even small details, like repainting the fence and arranging flower pots, made him feel at peace. He realized that although the HOA had caused a lot of stress, their actions had led him to a stronger sense of connection with his neighbors. Clara called Ryan one morning with an update on the settlement. The HOA has finally agreed to cover all repair costs and compensate you for the inconvenience. They have also promised to follow proper legal procedures for any future complaints. You should receive confirmation in writing soon. Ryan felt relief wash over him. The nightmare was ending, and justice was finally being recognized. While waiting for the formal documents, Ryan focused on restoring the inside of his home. He had noticed small scratches and dents on the walls and floors from the partial demolition. With help from local workers, he cleaned, repainted, and polished every room. It took time, but the house slowly felt like his again. Each repaired corner reminded him of how determined he had been to save it. Neighbors continued to visit frequently. Mrs. Lopez often brought baked goods, and Mr. Patel shared tools and advice for keeping the garden in good shape. Children from the neighborhood laughed as they played near the swing, which had been rebuilt carefully. Ryan appreciated their kindness and felt that the community had become like a second family. One afternoon, Ryan received a surprise call from the local news. A reporter wanted to interview him about the incident. They had heard about the bulldozing, the drone footage, and how the police had been involved. Ryan hesitated at first but realized it could help others. "I want people to know that even when things seem unfair, they can fight back carefully and calmly," Ryan told Clara. She encouraged him to share his story. The interview was scheduled in his newly repaired backyard. The reporter asked questions about how the bulldozing happened, the role of the drone, and the neighborhood support. Ryan explained everything clearly and calmly, showing some of the drone footage as evidence. He wanted viewers to understand that preparation, evidence, and calm thinking could make a real difference. After the interview aired, Ryan received messages from people across the city. Many thanked him for sharing his experience. Some were facing similar problems with HOAs or other organizations and felt encouraged by his story. Ryan was surprised and pleased to see how one situation in his neighborhood could inspire others to act wisely and confidently. As the days passed, Ryan finally received the formal documents from the HOA. The settlement included coverage for all repairs, additional compensation for stress and inconvenience, and a promise to follow proper procedures in the future. He read the documents carefully and felt satisfaction. After everything, his home was safe, his rights were protected, and justice had been served. That evening, Ryan took a quiet moment in his garden. The sun was setting, and the flowers glowed in the soft light. He thought about the past weeks, the fear, the destruction, and the uncertainty. But he also remembered the support, the evidence, and the calm actions that had turned the situation around. He realized that even the hardest challenges could be faced successfully with preparation, courage, and community. Ryan glanced at the drone controller sitting on the table nearby. It had played a critical role in protecting his home, showing that small tools and careful planning could make a big difference. He decided to keep it charged and ready, not for emergencies, but as a reminder of what had been accomplished. Neighbors stopped by to say good evening. Some brought small gifts for the newly restored garden, while others simply came to talk and enjoy the peace that had returned to the neighborhood. Ryan smiled and thanked each of them. He knew that without their support, the fight against the HOA would have been much harder. As night fell, Ryan finally sat down in his living room, looking around at the fully restored house. The repairs were complete, the garden was thriving, and the community had shown its support. Ryan felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had faced one of the most stressful events of his life and had come out stronger. He thought about the future. With the HOA now under strict legal oversight, he could continue living in his home without fear. He could focus on creating more memories, enjoying his garden, and spending time with neighbors and friends. The house that had been threatened with destruction now felt safer and more cherished than ever. Ryan turned off the lights and looked at the small blinking light on his drone controller. It reminded him of the days when he had streamed the demolition live to the police. That light now represented hope, determination, and the power of standing up for what was right. Ryan went to sleep with a calm heart, ready to enjoy the home he had worked so hard to save. Weeks passed, and Ryan's house finally felt like home again. The porch was fully rebuilt, the windows gleamed in the sunlight, and the garden was blooming with colorful flowers. Every detail, from the freshly painted fence to the new flower pots, reminded him of the journey he had been through. The house looked better than ever, and Ryan felt proud of what he had accomplished. The neighborhood had changed too. The incident with the HOA had brought people closer together. Neighbors who had rarely spoken before now exchanged greetings, shared tools, and even planned small events. Children played together in the yards, while adults watched over them and talked about community projects. Ryan smiled as he realized that even though the bulldozing had been frightening, it had strengthened the neighborhood. Ryan's story had also inspired others outside the community. After his interview aired, he received messages from people across the city. Many faced similar challenges with property disputes, strict HOAs, or unfair fines. They thanked Ryan for sharing his experience and showing that it was possible to fight for what was right. Ryan felt proud knowing that his calm and careful actions could encourage others to protect their homes. One afternoon, Ryan invited his neighbors for a small celebration in his backyard. Mrs. Lopez brought homemade pastries, Mr. Patel set up a small grill, and the children hung colorful banners they had made. It was a simple gathering, but it meant a lot to Ryan. The community had supported him through the difficult time, and now it was a moment to celebrate together. As everyone gathered, Ryan shared what had happened in his own words. He explained how the bulldozer had arrived, how the drone had streamed live to the police, and how the evidence had helped protect his home. The neighbors listened attentively, nodding and smiling as he spoke. They understood the importance of staying calm, documenting events, and supporting each other. Clara also joined the celebration. She congratulated Ryan for his patience and determination. "You stayed calm, collected evidence, and involved the right people. That is why everything worked out. Most people would have panicked and felt helpless," she said. Ryan thanked her, knowing he could not have done it without her guidance. After the celebration, Ryan spent some quiet moments walking around his home. He looked at the newly restored porch, the repaired windows, and the flourishing garden. Every corner of the house told a story of resilience and determination. He thought about the fear he had felt when the bulldozer first arrived, and he realized how far he had come since that day. Ryan also checked the drone one last time. The small blinking light reminded him of how it had protected his home. It had streamed the demolition live to the police, captured every detail, and helped provide the evidence needed to stop further damage. The drone had been more than a gadget, it had been a guardian. Ryan felt grateful for technology, planning, and the power of careful thinking. That evening, Ryan sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the garden. He thought about the future and how he could continue to enjoy his home without fear. The HOA was now under strict oversight, the settlement had been finalized, and his house was fully repaired. Ryan felt a deep sense of peace and security. As the stars appeared in the sky, Ryan reflected on the lessons he had learned. He had learned the importance of preparation, staying calm under pressure, and documenting events carefully. He had learned that neighbors and community could provide support when it was most needed. And he had learned that standing up for what was right could bring justice, even when the odds seemed difficult. Ryan smiled as he looked at his home. It had survived a serious threat, and he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected to his community. The house was not just a building anymore, it was a symbol of resilience, hope, and determination. Finally, Ryan turned off the drone, placed it safely on a shelf, and walked inside. The house was quiet, secure, and restored to perfection. For the first time in weeks, he felt completely at peace. He had faced one of the hardest challenges of his life and had not only protected his home but had also strengthened the bonds of his neighborhood. Ryan knew that life could bring challenges in the future, but he also knew he could face them. With careful thinking, determination, and the support of others, no obstacle was too great. His home had been almost lost, but it was now safe, thriving, and filled with hope. Ryan went to bed that night with a calm heart, ready to enjoy the life he had worked so hard to protect.